that room with a cage in it. You know, where all the cats were. That leads to where she is now. But from here on in, things get really, really dangerous. You could call it quits, but I already know you won't.
That's right. I'm stubborn.
I know.
We have to go. She's waiting.
Yeah. Let's get going.
Phew, I'm tired. I hope I'm not getting sick. Hey, could this be... Am I starting to talk to myself? I see.
Enter this code into that keypad. 1004. It's his birthday. He was always distant and cold on the surface. But he had a tender side, too.
Who?
It doesn't matter. Just enter the code already. All right, let's go.
Achoo! I hope I'm not getting sick. Huh? Is this? Is this?
Dawn was just about to break, and the subdued rays of morning light were finally spreading across the sky. I was taking my time, strolling through the bustling scene of the early hours. The clamor hurt my ears. Angry shouts rang from the main street, while flirts could be heard in the alleys. I avoided the hubbub on my way. Just being in a foul place like this made me remember the life I'd led. There was a shop with its door propped open. The music that wafted from within was not what you'd consider uplifting. The sign by the entrance was half shrouded in dark. The word Sylvia adorned it.
Boss, I think you've had enough,
A sweet voice said from behind the bar. The bartender was a long-haired woman in a sleeveless dress who was leaning against the wall.
I know it's up to you, but I think you've been hitting the bottle hard lately.
The voice was young and lilted, like that of a male cat calling to a female.
I think it might not...
Rika?
A glass clattered hard against the bar's surface, cutting her off. Silence followed.
Fine. Don't listen to me then.
The girl behind the counter took the glass to fill it, but grumbled in disapproval.
I'm just saying this out of concern for you. You look exhausted these days. And the last lady to run this place, well, you know.
Rika!
Again, the glass hit the counter. A cigarette was lit.
Once you're done, you can leave for today.
What?
Do you want me to fire you?
The woman bristled with anger. But the girl named Rika only shrugged her shoulders.
Don't say that. If you deserted me, I'd be all alone.
The glass she placed on the bar didn't smell of the pungent alcohol. It was a white liquid.
The last owner of this place died from alcohol poisoning. I don't want that to happen to you. See you tomorrow.
There was the sound of high heels approaching. I darted behind the sign.
Huh?
Rika looked up and down the alley, bathed in morning light.
Sylvia?
I already knew who she was calling to by that name. Rika gave a heavy sigh, for the first time, and dragged her feet down the dirty street. It was only when she was finally out of sight that I made up my mind. I'd never heard how Sylvia had been brought up before she died. She was so shy and quiet. There wasn't much to say about her. She was the one girl I didn't hate. But now, I was going to steal her name. At first, I thought it was revenge. It had to be. Revenge against them for living better lives than me. And it was revenge against my own cruel fate. Step by step, I made my way through the half-open door into the shop and whispered, "Mama." The woman was slumped over the bar, the same as when Rika first left. She sluggishly hoisted herself up to look at me and shook her head as though she wasn't sure what she was hearing. I whispered once more, "Mama." That's when her barren eyes, laced with crow's feet, wrinkled in a squint.
Oh, so it's you.
She laughed with tears in her eyes.
You poor little thing. You look just the same as when you first came here.
Something about how she said that made her sound like Rika.
Where have you been? You've been gone for so long. What have you been doing with yourself? Here, drink up. You can have this. It's your favorite. I'll give you whatever you need.
There's a good girl. She cooed in a slow drawl, offering me the glass. I wonder if Sylvia was also served warm milk like this the first time she came here. I'm sorry. I whispered for the first time to myself. I am Sylvia. Sylvia, with her purple bell. The little girl who was held close by Mama in a small downtown bar.
It's soothing watching the flames. Maybe I'll sit down. Wow.
A tall human was watering the garden. His white shirt and black slacks were simple and clean.
Teacher!
As the two young children called out, a man who was watering the grass raised his head.
Yes? Anything the matter?
The man they called teacher kneeled down to peer at the young boy through his glasses.
Teacher, when's Lot coming back?
The question came from the little girl. Even from a distance, I could see the man's face grow dark.
Teacher, will Lot ever come back?
The little boy looked up expectantly, but their teacher could only furrow his eyebrows and purse his lips. More children gathered, questions alight on their small faces. Their matching white shirts were tattered with use. I could imagine that Lot, too, had joined this circle with her signature yellow bell. The young children didn't appear to have parents. They lived in the big, plain house with the man they called teacher.
Now, what's taking her so long? She's gone away before, but...
The teacher murmured an excuse, but the children wouldn't be soothed.
We want to play with Lot again. Maybe Lot's sick. Maybe she's hurt. I bet she misses us. She must miss us.
As worry spread among the children, the teacher asked them a question.
Let me ask you, does it make you sad to think that Lot's lonely?
Of course. We miss her.
The teacher nodded and continued. Then, if Lot knew how you missed her, it'd make her sad, right? His voice was gentle. As I watched from a distance, I hesitated momentarily. I knew that the yellow bell that Lot possessed was from this orphanage, which was why I'd come. But I couldn't imagine that she really had a family in this place. Would anyone care if she were gone? Their worries now put to rest, the children returned to their games. But one girl lingered behind. A freckled girl with curly hair.
But we're all...
the girl mumbled, looking down at her feet.
We're all still sad. Even if Lot isn't lonely.
The teacher put his hand on top of the girl's head.
I suppose there are some things that can't be helped.
I know what you do at night.
The girl blurted, looking at him hard.
If you really felt it couldn't be helped, then you wouldn't be out searching for Lot every night after we've gone to sleep.
The teacher quickly put a finger to his lips.
Everyone's worried enough as it is.
But now I'm more worried about you, teacher.
The man simply nodded with a sad smile at the girl's words.
I know that. And I'm sorry.
Then, with the hose still in hand, he looked at the sky and spoke aloud.
Between you and me, I'm not all that worried about Lot. I'm sure she'll still survive outside these walls. All that matters is that we all considered her family. I'm sure she wants to treasure those words too, because the family we made here is the only one we've ever had. As far as I'm concerned, we're Lot's family, and as long as she knows that, everything will be okay.
Night came, and the lights in the orphanage winked out. I slowly crept out from the shadows that spread before the orphanage. The moment the teacher saw me, he stopped in his tracks. The light from the full moon completely transformed me. I rang the bell, knowing it was all I could rely on.
Lot? Is that you?
Yes. It's me, Lot.
So then, does this mean you're ready to come back to our home?
But of course. If you'll have me, that is. Back at the orphanage, the freckled girl was trying her best to calm the children who were crying from the teacher's absence. For days now, she'd taken his place guarding them at night. Holding the young girl to him, the teacher announced my return to all the children, to all the family. I am Lot. Lot with her yellow bell. A gentle member of this orphanage, with a bigger family than anyone could ask for.
If the ID cannot be confirmed, be removed. If the ID cannot be confirmed, be removed. If the ID cannot be confirmed, you will be removed. If the ID cannot be confirmed, you will be removed. Please call the
security's been activated. It's locked tight. Well, only one way to go. Forward!
Right. Hey, is this?
Everyone in town called the old writer who lived in this house a weirdo. The house was old-fashioned, and the walls seemed weighted with history. So little care and upkeep had been done to the place, it wouldn't be a stretch to call it a dump. The front door was always open, and not because it wasn't locked, but because there was no lock at all. Some would think that an invitation to burglars, but the place was such a mess that you'd lose all interest in stealing the moment you stepped inside. The house reflected its owner, an oddball, aged and in disarray. And this day, that oddball writer was laying in the middle of his hallway. For a moment I thought he was dead, but every once in a while, his finger would twitch, betraying signs of life. The bones in the back of his hands stood out, gnarled under paper-thin skin, but his slicked back hair looked young. The black framed glasses he habitually wore had stayed on, even after his fall. He'd probably worn those glasses so long that they were a part of his very being. And there he lay, weaving my way through the filth and the clothes and the furniture. I entered the house, and he didn't even notice.
Bisk!
He called my name in a gravelly voice. With each call, my body would shiver with surprise, and the bell would ring. It was a refreshing sound. The old man must have heard it too. He immediately leapt off the floor and turned his back to me.
Not another step.
The man almost spat out.
I don't want you coming near me.
And with that, he went back to the mountain of papers that buried what might have once been a desk. His hand never stopped moving as he scratched at his head. Believe it or not, he'd call out, drop to the floor, and do it all again. I was thoroughly baffled. And so I sat in the corner of the writer's room until night fell. The bell at my neck continued to tinkle lightly as I tilted my head. Can this man truly be Bisk's family? I came to check up on him every few days, but each time he'd act just as wild and nonsensical. When he wasn't throwing himself on the floor, he was completely immersed in his writing. Disturbed by his unnatural behavior, I tried my best not to allow my bell to ring, and so I stayed nestled in the corner until I finally heard the sound of a pen sliding across the desk.
Phew.
A loud sigh was immediately followed by a loud thud. He'd fallen backwards off his chair.
Finally, finished.
The way he breathed those words sounded so unlike his usual crazed tone. I lifted my head, and the bell chimed to him gently. With his back still on the floor, he let out a low moan.
Oh, Bisk. Bisk, my dear.
I was sure he'd yell at me to stay away again today, but instead he just lifted his thin, ghost-like arm and gestured to me. Just as I neared him, with my careful, steady steps, he suddenly grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and dragged me down with him. At first I went stiff with fear, but then I heard the beating of his heart. He gently closed his eyes and petted me.
Bisk, is that you? You've gotten so much thinner since I last saw you.
His bony hands were rough, but he petted me softly. As I sat there, unable to answer, the beating of his heart became softer and softer. He continued to coo at me gently.
Finally, I'm able to sleep.
His last words sounded more like he was speaking them from a dream. As the hand on me never wavered, I finally realized. My doubts were cleared. I understood now that this was the orange-belled bisque's family. And as I gently closed my eyes, I could feel the sound of my own heartbeat, slowly melting free of its ice. I am Bisque. Bisque with her orange bell. The foster child who brings peaceful slumber to the master writer, whom everyone called crazy.
No boy. Looks like a dead end. Guess he means business.
A dead end?
In other words, we're trapped in here.
I guess this is the end.
Huh? What's the matter? You're a guy, aren't you? It's too early to throw in the towel. Oh, I know.
What is it?
Would you... Well, would you like to hear my story?
Sure.
A long time ago. Long ago, there was a brilliant scientist who discovered, well, the secret of interaction. That is, how humans connect emotionally, the hidden ability to communicate without words. Way in the past, people could have connected with each other using that power. So a bunch of really smart scientists got together to study the idea. They thought if they could reawaken this power in everybody, we wouldn't have to use words to understand one another. They concluded that it'd make the world a better place. There were wars at that time. People argued and fought over little things and big things alike. Everything was a point of contention, and people grew tired of it. The whole world was unanimous in supporting the project. Using a machine they called Glass Cage, humans sent a signal around the world to try and trigger the latent empathy faculty in people's heads. This would enable everyone to naturally harmonize with one another.
After that, what happened?
Well, everybody was excited. Now that they could convey exactly what was in their hearts, all sorts of misunderstandings and ill will would vanish overnight. That's what they thought. The entire world was bubbling with hope. Everyone believed it was the dawn of a new era. They believed and smiled themselves to sleep. But then, the next morning, no one woke up. They slept and stayed like that forever. That's how they all died.
And you think it's happening again?
Yeah. That girl? She's gonna be the catalyst for it.
catalyst?
Her heart will make the connection and connect with everybody else on Earth. If it succeeds.
What if it doesn't work?
I told you, it'll be worse this time. Not a single soul will escape. And guess what? The first time around, I was the catalyst.
But, Sai, I don't get it. How did you end up as the catalyst?
Don't look at me. I have no idea. I lived a typical ordinary life. And then one day, they forced me to take all these tests. Before I knew what was going on, they decided to use me. They plugged all these cords into my head, made me take strange medicines. It was all very weird. I'm telling you, in all my days, I'd never felt such intense pain. It happened every day. More experiments. They didn't care at all how I felt. But there was this guy. He had a heart. Sometimes he'd slip me chocolates and candy. He'd even stop by and ask me if I was doing okay. And also, he thanked me nicely.
I see. So you and that guy, well, you were like friends.
You crack me up. I mean, I wouldn't exactly call Shin and I friends. If I had to label us, we were... Wait a minute. How'd that cat get in here? The door's still locked shut.
And the exit is blocked with rubble.
Quick! After him! He might lead us to a way out!
I found it! The cat's meowing on the other side.
If you crouch down, you should be able to fit.
Here goes nothing.
Ah, we meet again. 'Tis such a wonderful day. Well then, this is goodbye.
same cat from before.
There he is!
How did he get here in the first place? Wait!
Phew, I'm tired. Nice surprise.
Though you're still so small, you'll soon be born. So this message is for you. There may come a day when you'll curse being born into this world. You'll wonder what you did to deserve this. And you'll probably have plenty of bitter words to tell me. But I don't think I'll be around by then to listen to your complaints. I want you to know how truly sorry I am. I just want you to believe this. No matter what happens, all we wanted was for you to be happy.
To-do list. 1. Eat a whole cake by myself. 2. Share a meal with my family. 3. Visit all the friends I can. 4. Read all the books I've wanted to. 5. Buy the clothes I always dreamed of. 6. Make up with that certain somebody.
The silver bell wasn't a particularly outstanding decoration, but it did ring the most beautifully. I'd always wondered what kind of home such a lovely bell had come from. It belonged to an old woman who lived alone without relatives, in a large mansion I'd never seen before.
Madam, it's time for supper.
Thank you, dear.
Madam, the lilies in the garden have bloomed. I've put them in this vase.
What a lovely scent.
Madam, it started raining
Allow me to close the windows.
Yes. And draw the curtains, too.
The old woman was waited on hand and foot by her servants. She'd rely on their help as she sat idly in her chair, listening to her favorite music. She'd even ask them to change out the records. But most of the servants seemed to genuinely adore their employer. But there was one thing the old woman would ask several times a day.
Excuse me, but could you call Chris here for me?
Later that same day.
Oh, where is Chris?
And again, even later.
Please find Chris for me.
Though normally obedient, this one request was always met with hesitation. Madam, Chris is already... The maids would start cautiously. Oh yes, you're quite right, the old woman would say, cutting them off.
She's not with us anymore, is she? I'd nearly forgotten.
She'd murmur with a nod. But not a few hours later, she'd ask the same questions again. She had them stop her favorite record.
Oh, wherever could my darling Chris be?
One rainy night, the mansion was in an uproar. Madam! Madam! The servants dashed through the halls in a frenzy. Finally, one of the maids shouted in despair. Why can't I find her cane? Though it wasn't too cold outside, the sheets of rain continued to pour relentlessly. She couldn't have gone outside, could she? A chill passed over the gathered servants before they set out. They put on their coats and called for help outside. I tore my eyes from them and made for the rain-drenched town. Amidst the downpour, I smelled the sweet fragrance of lily. In the back lane of a park, far from the mansion, I made out the figure of the old woman. She was surrounded by a crowd who moved and gabbed around her.
Come on, lady, you'll catch your death out here. Maybe you should see the police.
The old woman's shoes and designer clothes were soaked through. A man tried taking her by the hand, but the old woman refused to budge, her face adamant. Fed up with her antics, the men finally left, leaving her behind. I cautiously stepped just into her field of vision, and without saying a word, rang my silver bell. It rang clear through the rain. The old woman raised her head sharply in surprise, her blurry eyes looking at me.
Chris?
The old lady rasped. I rang the bell again in a nod, and then turned around.
Chris, wait!
Her cane clicked as she followed me. I may not be able to carry her all the way to the mansion, but it'd be enough to bring her to her servants. I stopped often to look over my shoulder, to make sure I didn't lose her. The sound of that beautiful bell was a beacon. At last, one of the servants noticed the old woman and shouted, "Madam!" As she ran towards her, the old woman bent down to scoop me up and held me, trembling. The servants weren't able to hide their surprise, seeing how much the late Chris had changed upon her return. Not one of them said that I wasn't Chris. Because the old woman called me so, the maids nodded in obedience, just glad that their beloved employer had returned home safe. I am Chris. Chris with her silver bell. I'm the tiny, adorable Chris, loved by her grandmother in this grand mansion. I've gained so much. Gentle hands and many, many new names. Mondays, Henri. Tuesdays, Fleur. Wednesdays, Sylvia. Thursdays, Lot. Friday's Bisque, Saturday's Chris, and for just one day, I'm no one else but myself. It was supposed to be revenge. Revenge for the deceased girls who'd led a better life than I. With vengeance and blasphemy laid to rest, all that's left is me, a lie. Before I knew, I began wondering about the future. When? Tell me, when? When will I fall in love? Once I find someone who loves me, I'll finally be given a name. Not just someone else's substitute, but a name all my own. That's what I decided. So then why? Why did I have to meet him? He lived on a cliff face that looked down on the town. His features were considered striking, his posture regal. But those weren't the only things that made me stop in my tracks. I didn't really need a reason, because to him, it didn't matter what bell I put on. Nothing would change the fact that I was nothing. A bell with 2 stripes of light pink lay at his feet. It didn't belong to him. The bell, like his love, was waste on the street. His features knew despair. You could see the hollowness of death in his eyes. No matter how much I stared or spoke, he never once looked back at me. I gingerly pick up the rosy pink bell. Its soft sound should be enough to reach his ears, stir his heart, and open his eyes. Then, in a husky voice, he will speak in a tone drowning with emotion. He will call out the name of his past love.
Maria?
And I'll choke up with emotion and smile as I say, "That's right. I'm your Maria." And then there won't be any real me left in this world.
Please, tell me your real name.
I giggle softly and answer again. I'm Maria. His brow will surely furrow as he snuggles close.
That's not your name. It can't be.
But that's the name of your beloved, right? I loved you. But the one that you loved was never me at all. You loved the real owner of this pink bell. Imagine it. A rival whom even death couldn't kill. The one woman he really loved. I hated her, cursed her, and stole her name and identity. And I'd do it no matter how miserable it makes me.
Oh, Maria. If we'd never met, then I'm sure I'd have rotted away right on the spot.
Those are the only words that can bring me salvation now. As long as you're happy, then I'll never need a silly name. A storm was brewing. The high winds that had been beating on the windows since morning gathered dark clouds and pelted the forest trees. I leapt from the safety of the old woman's blanket, raced through the town, and headed for the mountain cottage, my old hideout. I'd take a bell and think about the past each time I came here. I go by many names now. So whose ghost remains in this dreary mountain hut? A brilliant flash of light, coupled with thunder, filled the sky. Every hair on my body stood on end. There was a tearing sound of wood splitting. Chills ran down my spine. I quickened my pace without thinking. A tremor crept down my back. The scene that greeted me as I reached that hut was indescribable. A massive cloud of smoke clogged my nose and burned my skin. The mountain was on fire, and the gusty winds helped spread the flames quickly. In my panic, I dove into the hut. The heat was as hot as stoked coals, but through the burning and stench, I knew I had to salvage my bells. They'd been proof that the girls had lived, and now they were the one place I felt at home. I gathered the 7 bells and made for my escape, but the hut entrance was already engulfed in flames. I leapt through a broken window, feeling as though I was being burned alive. I could hear the destruction all about me. Just outside the window was the cliff face. I jumped down from my perch, prepared to take the dive. Through it all, I kept the 7 bells tightly held in my mouth.
I never expected a weakling like you to make it this far.
What are you?
Hey, it's no use! Look out!
I do not have to answer to you. Any threat to the project must be eliminated. Fool. Your existence amounts to nothing more than a goldfish swimming upriver. When we were conceived, the age of man ended.
What? What are you talking about?
Our plan is on schedule. Make the most of the little time you have left.
We have to act fast!
Right. I guess the cat ran in here.
It'll be tight, but you can squeeze through. Be super careful.
Right.
Oh.